and welcome the interest that you have in this project for Oregon City. We have the City of Oregon City, who's the contracting agency for this project. The project was developed with partnership with ODOT, and OBEC Consulting Engineers was our design engineer for the project. Goodrich is going to
Okay, can everyone hear me okay? Okay. Well, good morning and thanks for coming for the Oregon 213 pre-bid meeting, like Alita said. I'm Bob Goodrich. I work with OBEC Consulting Engineers, and I was the assistant project manager for the design phase of this project. Behind me, there's a variety of design staff, both from OBEC and from sub-consultants for traffic engineering, environmental compliance, and landscaping services. So we're here today, hopefully able to answer questions you may have about the project's design and the plans and specifications. So I want to take a moment and make sure everyone has signed the sign-in sheet. This is a mandatory pre-bid, so if you intend to propose as a prime contractor, you need to be signed in to be eligible. So if there's any doubt if you signed or not, make sure you have. And there's a sign-in sheet on the door as you come in through the door. And I just want to remind everyone that the information shared in this PowerPoint presentation today and any questions and answers provided are informational only to help you clarify and help you understand our plans and specifications. No answers or information will be binding contractually unless we make revisions via future addendum. So with that, I'm going to get started. At the end of the presentation, there will be plenty of time for questions that you may have about either the presentation or portions of the project that I haven't covered. All right, looks like we're going. So the key project elements relative to design and advertisement. You can see that I'm not going to read all the bulleted lists, but those are the key components to the project. We're in the 7-week advertisement period now, began January 10th and concludes February 25th. We've issued 2 addenda currently. We'll go over the changes in those addenda and changes coming in Addendum 3 toward the end of the presentation. And we'll also spend some time toward the end of the presentation on the technical component, the C+D proposal and the price proposal. So by way of background, in the specifications, we list several items of supplemental information available for the contractor's use. You can see the list there. Most of that, if not all of it, is on the city's website at the site listed in the specifications. We will be providing additional information likely this week. Existing plans for the 2 bridges receiving rail retrofits and protective fencing, and then annotated roadway cross sections will be forthcoming as well. So the presentation topics, this sort of outlines the flow of what I'm going to talk about. There's a lot of aspects to this project, and so I'll try to move quickly, but also cover the detail and aspects that are unique or worth emphasizing or clarifying for you. So we'll basically go through the plans and specifications on the technical side, the design and construction features, and then we'll move into the like I said, the technical and price components of the bid. This is a best value contracting, and then we'll cover the addenda, as I mentioned. So starting with roadway, so roadway is the road work plus stormwater, landscaping, and the mitigation site work relative to the project. These are the key aspects: are the widening of Oregon 213, adding median barrier and traffic separators for a portion of Oregon 213, realigning Washington Street, constructing Prairie Schooner Way, reconstructing Clackamas River Drive, constructing a new roundabout. Our mitigation site, when I say mitigation site, is the area between the UPRR tracks and I-205, and that's being used as our environmental mitigation site to comply with land use permitting requirements. And so there's excavation and plantings and an access road all related to that. So now for the remainder of the presentation, I'll generally have a few bulleted points and then call up some subsequent plan sheets that just kind of highlight different aspects of the project. So the intent isn't necessarily for you to be able to read everything up on the overhead, but rather to just kind of follow along and look at the general aspects I'm talking about in the plan sheets. So here, this sheet 7A shows kind of the main area of work. This is the existing intersection of Oregon 213 with Clackamas River Drive and Washington Street. The Oregon 213 runs kind of diagonally across the page here, and so the Oregon 213 will be widened. This is the existing UPRR overcrossing. So Oregon 213 will be widened to the south for a distance, stopping before Redland Road. We'll be realigning Washington Street. It currently comes up to meet Oregon 213. It'll be realigned to the north to come under Oregon 213. 213 will be carried by the new bridge that is being constructed by Rapid Bridge Construction. Clackamas River Drive is remaining mostly in the same alignment. There's a little realignment and some pretty significant vertical profile adjustments. The roundabout not shown on this sheet is off to the side here. And then where Washington Street used to come to Oregon 213, Prairie Schooner Way now connects Oregon 213 and Washington Street. One of the items we'll go into more detail in the geotechnical area is settlement that's expected, large settlements that are expected along Clackamas River Drive and then along the Washington Street fills near the roundabout. So the property here is it's a gas station Stein Oil property, and there's some diesel fueling pumps to the north end of the property. And so there's some accommodation necessary because we're adjusting the profile on Clackamas River Drive by some number of feet in this location, and it requires the closing of the driveway for that construction. And so there's a temporary gravel turnaround being constructed to accommodate trucks having only one driveway, not being able to loop through, but come through the pumps, turn around, and go back out. And we'll be issuing part of Addendum 3, and Section 220 will be revised and clarified. There's some timing requirements that will be revised regarding the construction of this driveway approach because of the grade change at Clackamas River Drive. The work extends back almost to the pumps, and these pumps need to be serviceable for large portions of each day. And so there'll be some added timing restrictions for some of the construction in this area, as I said in Addendum 3. Plan sheet 6, this shows the roundabout and kind of the easterly limits of the project. It's a little difficult to see, but right in here there's a protect fence note. There's a historic house off of Clackamas River Drive that's fenced in. The fence and the property need to remain entirely protected during construction. We'll go over the roundabout, and there's a retaining wall here right along the UPRR right-of-way and a wetland no-work zone. We'll look at that in a little more detail as well. But this kind of shows the easterly limits of the project, and again, some settlement concerns to address in this area by just placing embankment early and monitoring settlement as it occurs, and finishing the road construction upon settlement having substantially occurred. This is a plan view of our mitigation site, as I mentioned, for environmental compliance. And this is the UPRR line and right-of-way, and then I-205 is sort of off the bottom of the page. We'll be doing a substantial amount of excavation in this area. One thing to note is that wood chips will have been discovered in some of the borings we took here, and so there will be, the wood chips are unusable material for fill in other areas of the project, and will just need to be disposed of. So just wanted to, and there's some details on that in the geotechnical report that's available on the city's website. And additional details in the plan sheets, and we'll look at one of those in a little bit. So with all the material that has to come out of the mitigation site, and then where you over excavate the wood chips, you have to backfill with topsoil. We're constructing an access road. So this is flipped around from the previous slide. So on this end of the mitigation site on the far right, so the mitigation site's here. There'll be an access road from there back between UPRR and ODOT right-of-way, back to Main Street in Oregon City. I mean, you can see the profile generally follows the existing contours. And so this will be the contractor's access for hauling materials in and out. Take note that on the right side of the page, there's the final profile kind of follows along the existing ground line there. There's a large culvert going under I-205 in this area, and so there's a drainage area. The road will be built along, in high water will be flooded and unserviceable, but we're providing a contractor option for a temporary high water crossing to facilitate wet month construction if that's something the contractor would elect to do. Sorry, touchy mouse. So the retaining wall will be constructed right about here in the middle of the page to stay off of UPRR right of way. And there's a note to remove the fencing, the right of way fencing along the ODOT line here. Currently, there's no indication to replace it, but by addendum 3, we will be requiring reinstallation of that fencing. This is just a plan and elevation of the mitigation site retaining wall. It's a contractor option retaining wall. It's just worth noting that it needs to be a load and resistance factor design according to AASHTO, and that the ODOT has a new set of pre-approved retaining walls that is a shorter list than what they used to have, and so that's just something I wanted to make note of, since it is a relatively new change. The stormwater design for the project, there's a wide variety of aspects to it. The drainage features, there's 6 facilities within the base project, and then there's 2 additional features in the deductive alternate. We'll get into the deductive alternate a little bit later. But this sheet just shows the swale, the pond near the roundabout in Clackamas River Drive. There's also 1,600 feet of slotted drains along Oregon 213. Many of the locations require riser extensions to get the inlets situated appropriately, or the inverts. There are 5 locations where we need to bore across pipes across Oregon 213. This work needs to be done under lane closures at night. We'll get into additional traffic requirements as well. But the trenching needs to be performed in a way that the road is open back up in the morning and such that traffic is not driving on steel plates in the morning. So just There's a temporary retaining wall required essentially for the stormwater facilities on Clackamas River Drive due to the large amount of settlement that we're anticipating in this area. Simply the culvert extension that's on the east side of Clackamas River Drive, if we just constructed it in the fill, the settlement would be unacceptable. And so the temporary retaining wall will permit most of the fill to be placed and allow a settlement period to occur. The retaining wall, holds that fill and lets the culvert continue to function. There's a culvert crossing, a pipe culvert crossing, Clackamas River Drive that needs to be extended through the wall to maintain the existing drainage features as they are while the settlement's occurring. Once the settlement period is complete, the wall would be removed or abandoned in place, and the 60-inch culvert extension could be constructed in its final configuration. So landscaping, this gives a good overview. There's a variety of landscaping types on the project and locations. This area, kind of between Prairie Schooner Way, Washington Street, and Oregon 213, has become known as the Gateway area. There's an Oregon City sign being replaced as part of the project, and then kind of a nicer, higher quality landscaping plan in this area. Down by the roundabout also, there'll be a landscaping plan similar in type to the Gateway area. Additionally, there's streetscape areas, Green Street areas with the bioswales. There's screening for the metro property, commercial frontage plantings, and then just general site restoration areas. And all the different shadings here show the different, indicate the different types of plantings, whether it's just revegetation, if it's lawn, or the types of trees. So continuing to the west, this shows the mitigation site again, the access road, and then the west end of Washington Street. This darker shaded area is where we anticipate a large amount of wood chips that require over excavation. Actual limits of the wood chips will be determined as you start digging, obviously. But that's based on the information we have, that's what we see as the likely limits. Irrigation for this mitigation site is located, the water sources at the west end of the mitigation site in the yellow shaded area shown here on sheet GN13. So that's the water line detail sheets show the supply connection to the irrigation system. So the structures on the project. So there's 6 retaining walls, 6 permanent retaining walls and 1 temporary retaining wall. The 1 temporary wall we've talked about is along Clackamas River Drive in this area. The 6 retaining walls are at the roundabout. There's 2 walls above and below the pedestrian path that extends from Oregon 213 down to Clackamas River Drive. There's the retaining wall we've covered along the access road. And then there's 2 soil nail retaining walls, one on underneath each of the bridge vents to retain the excavation from the Washington Street realignment. There are 3 sign bridges located here and here and here. The southerly sign bridge is the combination green traffic sign and VMS sign that will be installed. The VMS is the owner supplied material that's covered in the specifications. This middle sign bridge that is founded partially in a landfill, and we'll go over the landfill and some of the aspects related to that later. But one of the supports will be on drilled shafts due to the settlement that would be anticipated for a typical spread footing. It's a relatively long drilled shaft to support the sign bridge. And then, of course, there's the new bridge that's being constructed to carry Oregon 213 traffic over Washington Street. We'll go into that in some more detail as well. And then the two rail retrofits that actually, I guess one of them would be shown on this sheet. So that's an overview of the structures. So getting right into the rapid bridge construction for the main line, Oregon 213 over Washington Street. These are kind of the steps that we envision taking place over the course of the construction. So this is one of the bridge detail sheets. It shows off to the upper left is a plan view. Oregon 213 traffic would be moving side to side on the page, and then this is a section view of the trenching scenario. And so what we're looking at here is driving the sheet pile, and so most of this work is done at night under lane closures. Over the course of some number of nights, it's done in a staged manner where you close a lane and you drive sheet pile, you place the precast slab supports, which are kind of the L-shaped items there. You place the precast traffic slabs, temporary slabs, and then after that, or depending on timing and sequencing and your ability to get work done, you begin the excavation between the sheet piling to get down to the bottom of the cap. All of this is occurring over some number of nights with lane closures, and then progressing sequentially across the highway. And so once you're down to grade, you can drive your pile. Again, you'll be doing that at night. Once the pile are driven and cut off, you can begin forming and placing rebar for the pile cap. We anticipate this work to be done during the day in the trench. So you'd be, the traffic slab would be over you and you'd be working underneath there, constructing the pile caps. So then, and so somewhat simultaneous to this, sequencing work across Oregon 213, so the new bridge in its final location is shown here. Off to the west, to the left on the plan sheet, while you're building the pile cap across the highway, we'll be constructing the steel girders and concrete deck adjacent to the highway in this staging area. So once the pile caps are constructed and ready, once the bridge, the superstructure, deck and girders are constructed and ready, there'll be a 104-hour closure of Oregon 213 permitted, be implemented, and then at that time, the excavation necessary to make room for the bridge to be moved over will be performed, and then the bridge moving operation would occur within that. So those two activities within that 104-hour time period are anticipated to occur. There's precast end panels that are placed at each end of the new bridge as well, and those are in segments and detailed in the plans. Once the new bridge is in place in its final location and traffic restored to Oregon 213, will be commence with a top-down excavation of the remainder embankment of Oregon 213 that needs to be removed to accommodate Washington Street. Soil nail retaining walls will be constructed on each face of Washington Street in front of the permanent bridge vents, the permanent bridge pile caps, constructed top-down. And that's all the soil nail retaining wall construction is anticipated to occur following the 104-day closure. So the remaining retaining walls on the project, this is the roundabout retaining wall. You can see the right-of-way line relative to the wall control line. There's also the no work area I previously mentioned in here. There's a wetland no work area adjacent to the retaining wall. And the path retaining walls above and below the pedestrian path extending from Oregon 213 down to Clackamas River Drive. Utilities on the project. You can see there, Northwest Natural, PGE, and Quest are the public utilities. The City of Oregon City has a water line and sanitary sewer line. Those designs and relocations are part of this project, designed by the consultant team. And then there are some private utilities that are additionally need to be addressed. The project specifications indicate the various relocation plans or whatnot for the individual utilities. Addendum 3 will add some detail on the Quest relocations that currently are not listed. So the city water line, you don't need to read that right now, unless you get really good eyesight. So that I've shaded just the proposed phasing of the water line because that is an important aspect of the water line design. Maintaining water and sanitary sewer service throughout the duration of the project is critical. So bypass pumping will be required when making the connection to the new sanitary sewer lines. And then to drill in just a little bit more on the water line, the staging area we previously looked at for the adjacent location for the bridge to be constructed is sort of right in here. You can see Washington Street realignment coming in. So the existing water line comes across the UPRR bridge and out to the west toward the metro property. This line needs to be abandoned and the new water line constructed prior to really beginning any access road or rough grading of Washington Street to get into this staging area, or prior to any pile driving for the temporary supports. So that sequencing is an important piece there, and just wanted to highlight that. So the geotechnical and pavement design. We'll just kind of jump into it here. So settlement, I've mentioned settlement on a few different occasions. You can see there's a couple of different shaded areas in here to the east of Clackamas River Drive, where we had the temporary retaining wall, the culvert extension, and whatnot. We anticipate 12 to 36 inches of settlement to occur. In the area by the roundabout and on Washington Street coming up to the existing Oregon 213 alignment, we anticipate about 8 to 12 inches of settlement to occur. Again, you can see some no work areas. There's right in this area, there's a surcharge embankment along the pedestrian path. And the purpose of that embankment is to allow, the retaining wall type wouldn't tolerate settlement well, and so we need to preload that to get most of the settlement out for the retaining wall construction. So a couple of cross sections on the settlement and surcharging. So the top shaded area again is a section view of the surcharge for the pedestrian path. To allow that settlement to occur. And then in the lower left, this is along Clackamas River Drive. There's a call out regarding embankment settlement and then settlement embankment. There's actually a bid item for settlement embankment. And the concept behind that is you place your embankment up to the bottom of your pavement section, and then some settlement occurs, and you need to basically put more material back in, and so there's a delta between the post-settlement top of fill and then where it actually needs to be, and so that's paid for separately based on settlement that actually occurs. There's a sequencing on the lower right of of sheet 2B19, construction sequencing that gives approximate durations, around 3 months for the settlement. We'll be monitoring it with settlement plates as shown on this sheet, and sort of as the settlement occurs, we'll monitor it and make assessment on when the settlement's complete, but it's currently anticipated around 3 months. This just depicts the longitudinal pavement detail on the south end of the project, where Oregon 213 is tying, the widened portion is tying back into the existing portion where there's not full depth reconstruction of the pavement full width of Oregon 213. So there's just a detail there to protect the existing CTV relative to the new pavement section. So hazardous and contaminated materials. A significant portion of this project is on or adjacent to the decommissioned Rosslyn landfill. The project does require a hazardous and contaminated substance health and safety plan. They also need to have a certified industrial hygienist. Contaminated materials, which are different from hazardous materials, they're less worse, I guess. We anticipate soils from the drill shaft excavations, both for the sign bridge that has the one support in the landfill, and then some of the traffic signals near the main intersection. Those spoils are likely to have landfill material and required to be disposed of as contaminated materials. If depending groundwater may be encountered, and that may be contaminated groundwater that needs to be disposed of accordingly. Methane gas has been documented in the project area, and that's an important part of the health and safety plan, is to ensure adequate recognition of that and addressing, the safety concerns therein. Trench dams are being designed and called for to mitigate the migration of methane along the trenches. We have a detail of that. So this plan sheet 2B31 shows the smaller shaded area, not a whole lot smaller, but somewhat smaller, is the approximate limits of the landfill. The larger boundary is the approximate limits of the methane presence. And you can see for most of it along the east and the south and the west, there's not a whole lot of difference, but as you get to the north edge, you can see there gets to be somewhat of a, more measurable difference between the landfill and methane boundaries. And that's, what that's due to, we don't really know, but it's just what it is, and so we need to be aware of it as we're doing the construction and realignment of Washington Street. There's various specifications. 291 covers the health and safety plan requirements. 294 covers contaminated soils, and 295 covers contaminated groundwater. This is just the drilled shaft foundation details for the sign bridge. So there'll be the drill shafts for the sign bridge for the traffic signals will be longer than designer or construction staff are typically used to seeing, and there's the spoils associated with that may require contaminated disposal. The trench dam detail shown on 2B36. We have a tabular location of each of the trench dams required. In general concept, wherever, methane could migrate out of the landfill, we need one of these impervious trench dams. We've shown the locations on the plans, and you'll probably notice that the traffic conduits and the interconnect conduits don't have any requirement for trench dams, and that's because due to their size and their relatively shallow location, we typically don't see the need for those. I guess one more point that bears noting on the hazardous and contaminated materials is we did not find in our investigations any hazardous materials on the site. There were contaminated materials from the landfill, but no hazardous materials. So environmental compliance. We have 4 natural resourcing permits that we've obtained, 2 additional approvals with the core permit. The in-water work is specified in the project plans June 30th to September 15th. We need to restore all temporary wetland impact contours to original condition within 24 months of disturbance. The top layer of soil needs to be saved and reused when reconstructing the contours. The DEQ 1200C permit has been obtained by the city, but once a contractor is selected and under contract, that permit will be transferred to the contractor, and the contractor will be responsible for maintaining the permit. No work zone, just as an example, is shown here in the shaded red area. These are shown on the various plan sheets throughout the plan set. There's actually multiple locations even on this sheet. I just shaded one. And these areas are, will be protected and not disturbed. The in-water work, just for reference, is the extension of the culvert along Clackamas River Drive, shown on the upper left of the plan sheet 7A here. So traffic, when I was going over the rapid bridge construction, I mentioned something about lane closures. As you've read in the project specifications, Oregon 213 is not permitted to have any lane closures during the day. Any activities requiring lane closures must be accomplished at night. At night being generally defined as 8 p.m. to 5:30 a.m. There's some extended hours on weekends, exclusions for holidays. There's an extensive amount of detail in Section 220. The full closure, we'll go over that when we get to traffic control in a bit more detail, but it's a one-time closure of Oregon 213 for moving the bridge into place, 104 hours in duration. We've sort of loosely called it a 4-day closure, but the way the time frames worked out, it's actually a little more than 4 days. And then the commercial driveway, that's the Stein Oil property, access on the north driveway, and we've talked about that some as well. And there'll be a clarification in Section 220 on some time frames for construction there. So traffic control, sheet 2C shows sort of stage by stage, phase by phase, the layout of the traffic control. The bicycle and pedestrian detour. This will be in place for the duration of construction. All phases and stages require this detour. The intent is for discourage pedestrian and bicycle use of Oregon 213, encourage them to use the detour signed and shown here. Clackamas River Drive and Washington Street, pedestrians and bicyclists will still be using these facilities. How they use them will vary by stage depending if the undercrossing is constructed, if Washington Street is realigned, where construction activities are, but there will be a general east-west flow of whatever pedestrian and bicycle traffic there may be through the area. So we'll just take a brief look at each of the 8 stages of traffic control. Stage 1, which will involve some night work, is the widening of Oregon 213, the rail retrofit work, relative to the 2 bridges on the north end of the project. And again, the night work is subject to the lane restriction requirements. Stage 2 is roadway construction along Washington Street. So you consider the excavation and the fill, depending on which side of Washington you're on, realigning the road and preparing for the final configuration. Trying to get all the embankment in place that's needs to sit for the 3 months or so period of time for the settlement to occur. Get that started early. So then stage 3 is the 104-hour closure of Oregon 213. This plan sheet, shows the overall, streets and connectivity of the facilities to get traffic around. Various plan sheets to look at for additional detail. So the primary detour, if you're traveling north on Oregon 213, you would not be permitted to go past the intersection with Clackamas River Drive in Washington. This will essentially become a T intersection. Left turn down Washington and then west on Washington to downtown Oregon City. You get to downtown Oregon City and there's a primary and secondary route through downtown. It's going to be a lot of traffic. It'll be 24-hour flagging for this duration. The signal at 14th and Washington will be turned off and controlled by flaggers. So that's the primary detour routes, what we just looked at. The project specifications require the contractor to develop 2 additional contingency routes. And this is they're contingency. If traffic backs up too much, or if there's an accident, or just something could happen that makes the current detour not viable at the moment. And so the contractor will need to submit two alternate routes. The materials for those alternate routes need to be on hand and ready and able to be implemented within 30 minutes. So these will be submittals that we would review, for the traffic control plans relative to these detour routes. Stage 4, the improvements along Clackamas River Drive. Most of the improvements, it's not feasible to construct all of them based on the profile change along Clackamas River Drive and some of the staging. But you get most of the work done there. Stage 4, you close Clackamas River Drive to finish the tie-in. At this point, traffic will be using the Washington Street realignment underneath Oregon 213, while the remainder of Clackamas River Drive is constructed. Stage 6 is essentially installing the median barrier and traffic separator down, dividing northbound and southbound Oregon 213 traffic. And then this will essentially result in what's been called the Jughandle coming in, into its final form and final functionality. Stage 7 is a grind and inlay along Oregon 213 to kind of clean up ghost striping and whatnot, and traffic control will comply with applicable ODOT standard drawings. Stage 8 is the deductive alternate. Again, we'll look at the deductive alternate a little bit later, but it's essentially widening Redland Road, and so there's traffic control associated with that widening. Other temporary features of note, in the lower right corner, temporary signal modifications. There'll be video detection at all signalized intersections to maintain the actuation that's present today by the loops. We've talked about the existing drainage on Clackamas River Drive, and then Oregon 213, prior to the installation of permanent illumination, will have temporary illumination. So the base project has three traffic signals shown there. Again, the traffic signal installations, one of the unique features again is the deep foundations. This shows the intersection of Clackamas River Drive, Prairie Schooner Way, which is the connector to Washington Street, and then Oregon 213. Essentially, it's two separate two-phase signals, right in, right out only, scenarios. Again, the drilled shafts for the signals, just another reminder. So permanent striping and signing. The striping and signing in general, they're detailed differently depending if you're in an ODOT or city facility, just something to be aware of, because they have their different standards for materials and construction. And then the Oregon City welcome sign. So the timber portion of this sign will be replaced. It's going to be replaced with a laminated timber beam. This section 1097 of the special provisions require the contractor to fabricate this beam, deliver it to the person that will do the carving of the sign, provide temporary supports at the location for him to do the carving. I think you have to come back, you come back and flip it over for him. He does more carving, and then you transport it back to the site. Additionally, the concrete foundation and rock facing will be preserved to the maximum extent possible. Where damage is present or does occur due to the construction activities, repairs will be required. And then installation of helical anchors are required, as shown on the sheet here, to level, because this is over the landfill and the sign's kind of settled and is cockeyed, and the helical anchors will be used to level the foundation and over the long term hopefully maintain a relatively level sign. So illumination and the interconnect, there'll be underdeck lighting on the new Washington Street bridge. Again, illumination is detailed by type, whether it's the city system, the ODOT system, or there's a city-owned but PGE operated, and so there's some differences to just be aware of there. Fiber optic installation, again, is either ODOT or a Clackamas County standard system. And then there will be, with the deductive alternate, there's additional fiber optic installation. So the deductive alternate, I've mentioned that a few times, and I'm sure everyone has seen volume 4. There's a smaller plan set with a separate bid schedule. The work is kind of boxed in here and is reserved for right around Redland Road, the widening of Redland Road, and then a new traffic signal at Oregon 213, and then a loop modification where it meets Abernathy and Holcomb. So the deductive alternate, at the city's discretion based on project funding, may or may not elect to proceed with this portion of work. And that would be determined after receiving bids. So this is just the roadway alignment sheet showing the widening of Oregon 213, of Redland Road. So the traffic signal, the new traffic signal and loop modifications that I previously mentioned, this shows the traffic signal at Oregon 213 and Redland Road. And this again is the traffic control plan for the Redland Road widening. All right. We're almost done, at least with my talking at you. So the technical proposal. This is due on Friday, February 11th by 10 a.m. This should be delivered to Oregon City as specified in the project special provisions. You see in red there, maybe I should have made it bigger. The emphasis is on quality and content of the proposal. Some questions have come in like, oh, 100-page proposal, and so keep in mind it's a maximum of 100 pages. We're not looking for someone to just fill 100 pages with whatever they can think of, but we want content and detail in a way that corresponds to the response categories we're looking at that we've asked about. So if you get your proposal done and you think you've got everything in there and you're at 60 pages, don't sweat it. You know, we're looking for, you know, quality and not weight. So there is a 100-page maximum. There's some other requirements on page size and font size, and you can read and familiarize yourself with all of that. So the technical proposal is divided into two portions: the C component, which is technical qualifications, you know, the company and personnel's experience and background doing the type of work we're, you know, asking about and doing on this project. And then the D component, which is the project approach. That is, how are you going to approach the different aspects of this project, specifically, you know, relative to the categories we're looking at. So in the component C, technical qualifications, there's a maximum of 165 points spread over 6 response categories. Response category 1 I think it's titled multifaceted construction projects. And so what we're looking for is you provide up to 6 projects for this one response category. And then of those 6 projects, you select 3 to apply to each of the A through G criterion. So it basically shows with a relatively small number of projects that you've addressed a relatively wide variety of issues and challenges on those projects. You know, the ability to work on projects like that. So that's response category C1. Category C2 through C6, you need to provide 3 projects for each of those categories as well. Those projects can be one of the 6 you use in category C1, or you can use other projects at your discretion. A project information form is required for each project you submit, whether it's in category C1 or C2 through 6. The project information form should just be filled out as is. It's relatively brief. It's not intended to have any of the detail that would demonstrate meeting the criterion listed in any one of the response categories. It's there for just project reference and contact information, you know, should we have questions to follow up on. So you need to provide supplemental information to the project information form for each project relative to each response category that clearly demonstrates what aspect of the project matches up with the response category that you're addressing with your proposal. So it's just important to match up the scoring criteria with your write-up on the project and that they align. So when gets you the maximum points and it makes it easiest for us. So qualifying work in section 125.01, there's currently, you know, statements about if the qualifying work is complete or substantially complete, then you can use it, and then it goes on to talk about second notification like ODOT issues, and then if there's another agency that uses something similar. We want to clarify that it could be that a portion of a project, like if it's a bridge replacement, the bridge could be constructed, the guardrail and maybe some approach work not done, but the bridge is substantially complete. And if that's the qualifying work that you're trying to use, if you obtain a written letter or, you know, some sort of confirmation from the owner's PM that says this portion of the work is complete, that will serve the same purpose. So the idea is that whatever work you're trying to qualify on is complete, and it doesn't have to be the entire project at second notice. So moving on to response, or I guess component D, the 8 response categories for the project approach with a maximum of 165 points. So we're looking for details on, you know, project schedule, noise, you know, hazardous materials, how are you going to, or contaminated materials, how are you going to address those on this project? So it should be tailored and specific to the project details. There's a cooperation and superintendent reference form that's included. It's posted on the city's website. as well as the project information form as well. Submittal of these is mandatory to score any points for category D7. We should receive 3 of them from 3 different owners on 3 different projects, completed and submitted by the owner, not by the contractor. We received a couple of times categories D2 and D3. The A to E criterion are identical, and we've been asked, do you really mean those to be identical? And the answer is yes. The headings on the response categories are different. And so what we're looking for is responses tailored for each of those criterion relative to the heading of the response category. Category D8, quality control. Want to emphasize that we're looking for the quality control approach, not the plan. A plan could be, very, very large and occupy a lot of your 100-page page limit. That's not what we're looking for. We don't want to read a quality control plan right now. We just want to know what your key steps are, your outline of how you're going to control quality. So content, general approach, and outline should be emphasized with basically how are we going to arrive at a high quality construction product. So explain that, and that will meet the intent and requirements of the category. So component C and D, basically, we'll score each of the response categories, add it all up, and those will be that'll be the technical component score. So on February 11th, when all of this is submitted, there'll be no public opening or public reading. We'll receive them, we'll distribute them to those that are going to review and score. So there's a 2-week period from this date until February 25th, 2 weeks later, when there's the price opening. And during that 2-week period, we'll develop the C plus D scores, for each proposal submitted. So then on February 25th at 10 a.m., we will do a public opening of the price component, the project bid total. So we'll receive the bids by 10 a.m. At 10 a.m., we'll begin opening them. We'll read them aloud. The project bid total, which is all of the bid items through and including the deductive alternate, will be included in the project bid total. That bid total will be the basis for scoring the A component of the contracting method. So low bid receives 220 points. Every bidder thereafter that's higher loses 1 point from the 220 maximum for each $40,000 above the low bid. And again, I want to emphasize the city reserves the right, though the price A, or the component A score will be based on the deductive alternate, the city may or may not award the deductive alternate subsequent to awarding the contract, or subsequent to determining best value based on the scoring system we're laying out here. So a maximum of 550 points are available. I guess I've covered some of this, but we'll read the project bid totals of each submitter publicly. Then we'll reveal the C plus D component scores publicly. We'll determine the A score component at the same, in the February 25th meeting. We'll read those publicly, sum up the 3 components, and determine the apparent successful bidder right there. Subsequent to February 25th, all bids will be reviewed for responsiveness. February 25th is only a preliminary finding subject to the responsiveness review, and then ultimately subject to city commission approval. And then again, the contract may be awarded with the bid schedule including or not including the deductive alternate. All right, addendum number 1 was issued January 18th. Some various clarifications. on administrative changes. Traffic control payment for this extra for contingency TCM is relative to the detour routes that the contractor needs to develop during the 4-day closure. And then some traffic sheets were revised and updated based on some details from ODOT that came in. Addendum number 2 was issued yesterday. We replaced the bid schedule. Some bid items were deleted. Probably the one to note, there are some different subtotals and whatnot in the bid schedule. We removed all of those so that there's just a single total at the very end of the deductive alternate bid schedule. So you just add up everything for the base, for the deductive alternate, and then there's just one number that goes in the bid booklet now. There's no subtotals. The C and D scoring tables were replaced. Some descriptions were updated, some scorings were revised, and it was easier to just replace the entire thing than try to describe in excruciating detail where to look for what number to change. Some MSC retaining wall design criteria were revised as well. A specification for the retaining wall, I think it's the retaining wall along the mitigation access road was added. And then erosion control sheets were updated to comply with the DEQ permit. Upcoming items that will be revised in Addendum 3. Addendum 3 will probably be issued early next week, maybe late this week, we'll see. The claim review process in section 199.40 will be revised. As I've mentioned, the section 220 requirements for access to the access to the commercial driveway and pump facilities will be revised. The fencing along UPRR and the access road. The 1200C permit has been received. Steel plate girders will be added to the steel escalation. We'll clarify the payment section of 225.97, and as I've mentioned, add additional description of the crush relocation plans in 150.50. And with that, I'm going to take a break and open it up for some questions. And I guess this is being, recorded, so we'll get you a microphone for your questions. The presentation is not currently available online. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Correct. Yeah, correct. I've been doing my power. I guess it is online. Yeah.
Who eliminated the need for a quality control manager? Is there any possibility of doing the same for the hygienist and the TCS? Mainly because there's so many subcontractors that would bring that to us, but that wouldn't be available until we got their number.
Until you got their number?
Until we got their bid.
Oh, until you got their bid.
So we could put somebody in, but we wouldn't know if they'd be low until the 25th.
Oh, I gotcha.
I think an easier way to do it is just put the qualifications that you're looking for in the specification for, you know, experience for the TCS and for your hygienist. Just be an easy way to do it.
Okay. Well, we'll give that consideration.
Another item was you have a bid item for coated reinforcement, and you have a quantity for the uncoated, but you don't for the coated. And I was just wondering if that was.
I guess we'll have to look into that. If there's a bid item, there should be a quantity. So. Yeah. No, there should be a quantity if there's a bid item. So we'll correct the inconsistency.
Are you going to put addendas out after the proposals have been submitted?
When you say the proposal, you mean the technical proposal on February 11th? I think we would continue to issue addenda on items related to the price component of the proposal. Nothing affecting the proposal, no.
If fill permits have already been, and you've calculated everything temporary and permanent for the impacts in the over-X and the excavation area. If water gets in those areas and the in-water work, when the water rises, is that considered in-water work?
You're talking in the mitigation site?
That would happen actually in elevations out there.
That would be.
On the Oregonian editorial on Sunday that said that the urban renewal district might go to a public vote. Does that affect the funding for this project?
No.
You have secure funding outside of that.
Correct.
I know that you have some noise requirement for while driving, and the other things like 1,000 feet of radius of your work, and 3,000 feet of residential area where you can't drive pile. So that's like if you keep your pile driving noise below the decibel level, then you can pretty much carry it.
Yes. I think that's correct. Can you repeat that one more time? Because I'm not sure.
You have some requirements on noise for pile driving.
Right.
For the special provisions, it tells you that 3,000 feet radius from the pile driving to any nearest residential area, you can't do your pile driving after 10 p.m. So if you like contain your decibel level, doesn't mean you can.
Yeah, I think I don't want to. Yeah, I don't want to answer it carelessly here. So I think we'll have to get back. We'll issue a response on that after the meeting here to make sure.
And on that, because the noise deal is not just pile driving. It says all night work, period, will have noise barriers placed between the equipment. So I would assume that that's noise barrier full length of 213.
So your question is how and when?
Yeah, how and when? I mean, is that supposed to happen at night as well? What stage? Understanding that was strictly the barrier work, though.
Yeah. Any other questions? The selection committee is going to stay confidential. Other questions? Well, I guess if there are no other questions, thanks for taking the time this morning to come out and yeah, we'll post the information on the website.